And so let's get this workshop started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. There is a little bit of information that I'm going to share with you first um, as we go through, and then it's going to be a lot of, let me move all of your faces off the screen so you're not staring at yourselves. Um, there's going to be very particular focus for this, and then we'll have time at the end to ask any questions, whether it's about the focus that we're doing for today or just general questions. Um, we're calling it a focus because D2L did not have a lot of updates and changes this time. And so we decided to call it a focus, or I decided to call it a focus because that's what we are really doing. Maybe. Okay. So we're just going to show some tool options to increase efficiency, right? We've got 4 goals. We want to increase efficiency, demonstrate some tools to help course organization, showcase ways to implement and increase RSI, and equip you with some methods to communicate. Now, I realize that many of you may not be teaching online, and that's completely fine. Any of these things you can use, whether it's traditional classroom or in an online classroom. We really tried to make the focus that broad so that it would help with anyone that was currently using D2L. For some reason, my slideshow is not working very well today. So, okay, what are we looking at? Again, efficiency, organization. Our focus 3 is regular substantive interaction, and focus 4 is communication. And like I said, why are we doing this? There were no significant changes to D2L this summer, at least not that have been implemented on campus. And we don't see any coming down the pipe. Again, that'll be implemented on campus anytime soon. And so we decided to really concentrate on maximizing our LMS use. And so I'm not sure what's happening to my computer and not working correctly. That's frustrating. Let's try one more time. Right. So feel confident when the technology person can't use technology. Feel confident. Um, because that's how I would feel. So our next slide is about efficiency. But it is not wanting to change. There we go. Okay. So what are we doing when we talk about efficiency? So, two of the things that we really wanted to focus on this time were the Copy Quiz tool and the Copy Dropbox tool, because you may or may not know that they exist, right? And so we wanted to make sure that you knew they existed and how easy it is to use them. So, I am going to literally show my other screen now for real because you need to be able to see it and show you what I mean and how easy it is. All right, can everyone see okay? Again, let me move all of this out of your way.
If you could
All right,
increase your font just a little bit, that'd be great.
yes, ma'am. Is that better? All right. So I just made a little module that says focus efficiency, just so I was trying to be organized and not overwhelm you with all the things that I throw into my sandbox. And I made a quiz and a Dropbox. So now, if you are making quizzes, and you say have multiple quizzes, and you know you're going to have multiple quizzes that basically are going to have the same instructions, meaning maybe you've set the time for 30 minutes, maybe they're knowledge checks, so they're all 10 to 15 questions, they're all multiple choice, be auto graded, etc. Then you can just now, and if you did not know, hit this snazzy little caret and it'll say, do you want to copy this workshop quiz? So I made the workshop quiz already. I put a couple questions in there, so now I'm just going to say I want to copy it, and it has literally copied the quiz for me. And all you have to do is change the title of it. Some say workshop quiz 2. And if whatever description and instructions you had will still be there. So if you had a lot of instruction there for your students before the quizzes start, all you would have to do, if the quizzes again are the same, is maybe change little minute edits, make little minute edits in that copy in the quiz feature in the description. And then, of course, you would want to change your questions because it's going to copy the questions. That's really easy to do. If you just select them and go to more options, you can delete all the questions and then you're able to pull in the correct questions. So again, once you save it, and you can copy a quiz as many times as you want to, there's no limit. So, as an instructional designer, sometimes when I know faculty have multiple quizzes in their class, I'll make that first quiz and then I'll literally just copy it over and over and over. Because then you can also, when you go in to change, say, the name of it, you can also connect it to the grade book right there as well, and it'll save you that time also. And then all you would have to do, just like anything else, if you wanted it in the course, is you just go in and say, I want to add an existing activity and it's a quiz. And you tell it the quiz that you just made and pop it right in there. And now you have what you just made right down there. The same can be said for Dropbox now, which I also think is pretty awesome, particularly if you have, again, several I'm going to show you real quick, several Dropboxes that might have or similar instructions. Maybe they're doing multiple reflection papers throughout the course, but just on different things. Maybe you're having them do some sort of uh, short annotated bib for a module and you want them to do another one, something like that. So as always, you just put your instructions in here, right? Like you would normally do. And just like the quiz tool, you literally go to that Dropbox once it opens, go to that Dropbox and hit to copy assignment, and it's just going to copy that Dropbox for you with those instructions, with whatever parameters you put in there. So if you put a bit availability start to end dates, if you put maybe they're submitting a link instead of a file, if you have a rubric that you've already attached, maybe you have a rubric to grade those reflection papers and you've already attached it to the evaluation and feedback, it's going to copy all of that information for you so that you don't have to do it from scratch over and over. And again, then you would just change the name of the Dropbox, and I'm just going to call it 2. And this is where you could stick it right in the grade book if you wanted to as well. And so it would be that simple. And if you don't, for some reason, you can set it to reset to ungraded, and that nasty little red box will go away. And then you just hit save and close. And now you have that second Dropbox with all of your information in it that you didn't have to start from scratch and just embed it in content as you normally would. Any questions about that? I feel like that's pretty straightforward. And some of you may have known about the feature, some maybe not. So you can see where it says workshop Dropbox. This is the one I copied. And now my copied one is right here with all those same instructions and the same parameters as the other Dropbox.
And just be aware that when you copy that it puts it first initially as hidden to the user. So you may think that you have already inserted it and students should be able to get to it, but it's still hidden.
Yes, that's what that actually is meant to be an eyeball with a line through it, in case y'all didn't know that. And so you can click and say, oh, oops, I forgot to unhide it. And I have done that before where I'm like, y'all got this. And they're like, no, we don't. It's because I forgot to unhide it. So it happens. But that's all you have to do to unhide it is just click the button. But it does by default hide them for you, which I think is a good feature. Questions, concerns, comments?
I have a quick question. Can you
Yes.
bulk edit? I'm sorry, my allergies are insane today. Can you bulk edit like due dates and things like that? So like you were saying, if you copy, scroll to
Yep.
bulk edit, change it all at the same time?
Yes, you can bulk manage dates. Absolutely.
Excellent.
Yes. I can show you that in just a second because we're going to talk about dates next, actually. Ironically. So now we're going to kind of focus on organization. And I'm not going to change my slide just because I want to stay in D2L right now. The first thing I want to talk about real briefly is start doing end dates. And I think that most of you are aware of what start, due, and end dates are. So I don't want to go through that. But what I have, or what we have gotten feedback about, is sometimes students are confused about what start, due, and end dates are. So if I go into edit Dropbox. Maybe. And I go to those dates. Make it really clear to your students if you are using due dates and end dates, that due dates actually mean that something is due and that the end date is when the Dropbox will close and they can't have access to it. So if you have a due date and an end date and you make them different, then students can still submit things in the due date. It'll just tell you in red, of course, that it's late. So for the student, however, we have heard that they get confused if there's an end date because they think the end date and the due date, or the end date is the due date. So a couple of things, you could either make the due date and end date the same, or as I said, really expressly say to students, your due date is when it is due, your end date is when you'll no longer have access to it. And when you're thinking about access, really think about if you want their access to be restricted completely, meaning they can't get to it all. Do you want it just restricted so that so they can see it, but they can't submit to it? Or do you want it hidden, period? So if it's hidden, period, they don't see it at all. If it's visible, but the access is restricted, they know it exists, but they can't click on it. If it's visible with submission restricted, they can click on it, they can read the Dropbox, but they can't submit anything to it. And you always want to, if you're using the calendar, you want to check this box to add your dates to the calendar. That way the student will see the start date if you've added one, they'll see the due date, and they'll also see the end date. And if you have, as Anne asked, a bunch of Dropboxes that you have copied that has, say, a date on it, and you want to manage that date, if you go to Edit Course, there's this nice handy dandy little feature right here that says Manage Dates. And if you click on it, it will show you all the dates that you have set in your course for all of these tools, unless you tell it specific tools. And then you really can, as Anne was asking, you can say, I only want to look at the Dropboxes and apply the filter, and it's only going to show the Dropboxes and those dates. And then you literally can either change them there, or you can do a advance so many days, and all the way up to advancing a year. I don't do that because somehow I'm always bad at the math and I get it wrong. Every time, I don't care what I do, I'm wrong, and then I have to fix it anyway. However, y'all might be better. Um, so that's the way I do it, is I go in and actually look at the dates. It makes me feel more comfortable because I always get that bulk edit when it just says advance at a year somehow wrong. But that's just me. So this is where you would find that under your edit course feature and then manage dates. Any questions about either one of those before I move on to manage files? Okay. So let me go back home. All right, so I think I have a poll question. Do I have a poll question, Karen, about manage files? Did it save? I tried. I may not have gotten it done in time. Let's see. Okay, there we go. I just put out a poll. So if you could really quick just answer that question, that would be awesome. It'll help tell us a little bit of information. That's really important, actually, because for those of you who say yes, you're going to know exactly why we're going over it. And for those of you that said no, you're like, why does nobody tell us about this feature? So as you are still answering that question, D2L is technically a file management system in a lot of ways, just like Word, just like H5P, just like Excel, etc. So if you ever go to Edit Course, you have an area called Manage Files. Right next to where it's Manage Dates, Manage Files. And this tells you in the back end what you have in a particular course. And if you're not careful, this can get really, really messy because we start adding things in content and it's just going to add it here as a like a file. So I'm going to show you in just a second. So right now we have student supports, D2L support, and student supports, and then we have the typical Brightspace HTML template. So if you click on D2L support, in here are the files that we have that are in the class for students under that D2L help. But we put them under a file folder so we're not just listing PDFs or listing Word documents or listing HTMLs in the manage files area. So, and to get back, all you have to do is click right back to where you were. You can go and look at, say, for student supports, we have quite a bit of support here. And all of these particular HTMLs, PDFs, etc. So say, for example, I wanted to upload a file to my class, right? So you're going to go in and you're just like, okay, I'm going to add a file. I'm going to upload a file. It's from my own computer. It's not in the course. So I'm going to upload something and I have no idea what's going to pop up because it's just based on what I've been working on. I don't want to add a picture. So let's say we're going to pick the flex modality information. So we're going to select our file. We're going to say open. It's going to be here. And then instead of just clicking add, you want to choose your destination. And you can tell it which file folder to go into. So say if it's a folder for, or if it's a file for module 2 and you haven't created the module 2 folder, then just hit new folder and say you want to call it mod 2 and it will create it for you. And then you just select it and then say select the path. And then if you look down here, please pay no attention to this part. It's actually my sandbox. If you look in this part, it literally says now that this is in module 2. And you hit add. And it's added that Word document in content. But instead of just putting it in the course as a single document that's just to itself hanging out there, I've put it in the module 2 folder so that it helps you stay organized. Whenever you see this chain link, just in case, that means it's connected in D2L somewhere. So this is a really, really important feature to help you stay organized as a faculty member for those who use D2L traditional or online classes, because if you don't, it's just going to give you a long, long list of documents and information that you've thrown into the class or put into content if you did not organize it in any way in the back end. Questions about that? This is something that will help efficiency and organization for you strictly because things will be organized. So it'll be more efficient if you want to go in and change things out. Maybe you have a file that you had to update and you want to go in. You don't want to just stick it randomly in D2L. You're like, oh, it goes in module 2. So let me put that in the module 2 folder. Or, oh, that's going to go in unit 5. Let me put that in a unit 5 folder. Or maybe if you're a traditional class, you say are putting your PowerPoints. That's what you're using D2L for. You're putting your PowerPoints out there or whatever you use for lectures so that students have access to them. I would still create in that manage files area something that's called PowerPoints or lectures and put them all in there so they're all into their self instead of being listed one by one. Because again, eventually, particularly if you are in an online, if you're teaching online, you're going to get a very long list of files and that's going to be bad at some point. Just saying. May not be tomorrow, but at some point that's not going to be helpful. So always try to think about using manage files whenever you're using D2L. Yes, Dr. Mulhern, how can I assist? I see your hand is raised.
It is. You've seen the back end of several of my classes. If I went in and used manage files and cleaned it up all pretty and had folders, which I do love and appreciate, how would that impact the pre-existing course? Would I have to go reinsert things and update links, or would it automatically fix it for me? Like if I have a link to my syllabus and then I change then I'd like create a subfolder of like course documents. And I move the
Mhm.
syllabus into the course document. Am I gonna have to go update all my internal links?
If you have already, say, put your course in the active semester, yes. If you're in your D2L blueprint, no.
Okay,
Because if you do that in your D2L blueprint, and you clean it up ahead of time and fix it in there, when you put it in your active semester, it's literally going to be what you wanted it to be because you cleaned it up in the master. However, if you do it in an active semester and you move things in the back end, it is going to say, oops, there's an error there. I can't find that anymore because it
okay.
doesn't automatically update in that way in the active semester.
So essentially you're telling me for my 2010s and 2020s, this is a between the semester project.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That would probably be a good call. Yes, absolutely.
I will say that
Especially,
if, go ahead.
oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, especially if you've never really gone into your managed files for a class before, definitely make it a between semester project because you'll probably be shocked if you've not gone back there to see how large the list may be. What were you going to say, Karen?
If you do happen to move something and you return to your content area and it says it's a broken link, it will pop up a box that says, hey, this is a broken link. Would you like to go find the thing that you were pointing to? And so then you can then go into choose course files and then navigate your manage files area on the screens that pop up. So it's not completely horrible as in, oh, I have to go relink. It's when you're there, it'll say it's a broken topic. But then you should be able to fix it just by clicking on it. Your
And
mileage may vary.
let me see if I can just do that real quick. We'll see what happens. Why not? That's what this time is for. Any other questions while I'm doing this?
Deanne brought up a good question about being able to search the managed files area to see where things are. And we know that the search features of the D2L managed files is not fabulous, but we know
No.
that D2L is working on an AI tool that we're hoping will improve their search features because that's the database basically that their AI tool would be working against, so to speak, when that comes available. So we're hoping for better search features as things improve here. The other place that I will say that you'll see that if something has gone awry with you've moved some files and things like that, images, course banners seems to be the biggest telltale sign that you may have moved some things. So that might be another place to look more specifically if you run into issues.
Yes. Very true. Thank you, Karen. Karen, extraordinary people. Any other questions before we move on to the next thing? All right. So our next focus is RSI, regular substantive interaction. And a couple of things. Wow, I don't want to look at that right this moment. Let's get into Dropbox. So just to hide my face for a second, because that's a horrible freeze, or wonderful for those who like to pick on me. When it comes to feedback, one of the things that actually has changed this summer in D2L is when it comes to feedback for students. So I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen and let Karen share her screen really quickly. Because you can now, they now have feedback actually with the grade rather than the Dropbox item. So this is the only thing that's changed. The quiz feedback hasn't changed to our knowledge. The discussion feedback hasn't changed to our knowledge. It's just for the Dropbox. But for Dropboxes, when you're grading them, as all of you know, the feedback would be housed with the tool, with the Dropbox. Now, for the student, it is now housed with their actual grade. So it's easier for the student to find because if they're going to look at their grade, it's going to say, here's your overall feedback. And then whatever files you may have attached to it. So this is actually the one thing that has changed. That's a pretty big deal. because students often had a hard time finding their feedback or saying they couldn't find their feedback, whatever it happened to be, they struggled. But we know they know how to look at their grades, no question. And so now when they go look at their grades, if you've given them feedback to that particular assignment Dropbox, it's going to show up with the grade in the grade tool rather than the Dropbox tool. Any questions about that? I'm pretty excited about that as an instructor, even though we tell them in so many ways, in so many places, how to find their feedback. It still seems to be a struggle. So very excited about that feature. I actually hope in the future they also do that with discussions. I did test that because I am teaching right now to see, and it didn't do it with discussions. So I'm hoping that is something they're working on maybe for like their next tool. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is video note. So I am going to launch one more question. If you would be willing to answer it, I'd appreciate it while I get back to my pretty little frozen face there. Awesome. Most of you know about the video note tool, so that's great. We are actually going to talk a lot about editing the video note tool, which we didn't used to be able to do. And we can now actually do a lot of editing in the video note tool. So for those of you who answered that you do not know how to use the video note tool, in any descriptive box, meaning any box where you can add a description and have an HTML area, you can always record a video note by clicking Add Video Note. I'm going to go ahead and click it and share my screen so you can see what I'm doing when I'm adding video note here. All right, so I'm going to select new recording and it's not looking at me and it's not really doing anything because right, my camera's on me, I'm using my camera, etc. If I wasn't using my camera, it'd show that, etc. But you could say start recording, select new recording. So it recorded me, it recorded my audio, but it couldn't record my camera because I'm using it. Okay, so that's just how you would insert a video note. So say you have a video note. I'm going to go back to my video note that I made. So I made this video note this morning, just as I showed you, right? Just like I showed you, I did. I went in there, selected video note, said add video note, and then did this. And when it asks you the questions at the end about what your title is, what your description is, do you want to auto caption it in what language? Because you have to select the language first before you can check the box. And you want to make sure that you do that because students can always turn off the closed captioning because as you can see, it's going to play on here. I'm going to turn my captions on. Oops, sorry. So you can see the captions are going. I don't know if you can hear me. I hope not. It'll be a lot. So you can edit the caption, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if you need to edit captions, and there were some in here, like it didn't smell, I think it spelled malleability wrong. I could be wrong on my spelling. But if you wanted to go in and edit those captions, I'm going to show you, or you create, say, a video note. Maybe you make a video note that you want to send to all of your classes. Like you want to make it as an announcement and you want it to be for all of your classes because it's a generic thing about maybe something being due on Friday. Don't forget that your assignment's due on Friday, blah, 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 by this time, right? Or even if it's say it's a traditional class, hey, don't forget, we're going to be talking about XYZ when you come to class on Friday. And you want to post that video note, but you don't want to do it over and over, right? You don't have that kind of time. So if you record that video note, you can always go up here to your media library. And if you click on your media library, it's going to show you the media you have made in D2L. Every single piece of video and audio that you have made in D2L will be listed in this My Media area. And if you want to, you can go here and say, I need to edit this. It doesn't look right. And you can go in here, and where it says closed caption, you can literally go in and edit each one. If you have a transcript, you can now upload it as well. So maybe you have a transcript of something that you made a short video note of. You can upload your transcript. If your video note is a little longer, which we don't recommend it being too long, but if your video note is a little longer, you can go here and now you can add chapters and chapter titles to your video notes. You can also trim your video notes. Maybe, like me, you look like a silly fool at the very beginning and you want to trim that off so your thumbnail looks better. Or maybe for whatever reason, like I do sometimes, I can't seem to find the stop button. And so I literally look, like I'm looking all over the screen for the stop button. You can trim those now. So these are things that you can do that you couldn't do in video note pretty recently, actually. The captions were always there, but then they've added more and more features to make sure that we can edit them. And then if you wanted to insert it somewhere, I can't right now because I'm editing, but if you wanted to insert it back into your course after you get done editing, which you can do, then you just, because it automatically saved, right? And it tells you that little green button, I saved it. So if you fixed it, you can go in and say, okay, I actually want to put this in my content, or I want to preview it, or I want to rename it, etc. You can do any of that here. And then once you edit it, like I said, it auto saves and you can put that in your anywhere you can put a description box or anywhere you can add a video. We're very, very big on recommending to faculty that when you are grading, giving written feedback, of course, using a rubric, hopefully, but then also if you are teaching an online class, particularly adding an audio note or adding a video note, because you can do audio just the same, just without your photo or without your image. And so the student sees you or hears you and or hears you as well as that other feedback, because that's really just going to help them be able to make sure that they're understanding the feedback you're giving them, because they can hear in your tone, hey, you did this great, or you need to work on this, or, this was really interesting, or, great job here, keep going. Whatever it is that you want to tell them, it kind of gives them both ways to accept that feedback. And then also too, again, because now with a Dropbox, that feedback's going to be with their grade, that video and or audio will show up there too, because it's in that general feedback area. So the student will be able to see it there as well. Video note really increases regular substantive interaction. If you do teach online courses, RSI is very, very important for federal funding and aid for students. Correspondent courses are no more. And so video note is a really great way to increase that regular substantive interaction. Maybe you're putting something in because something current's going on with what you're talking about in your class. Or maybe you noticed a pattern, say, in a quiz and so everyone missed the same question. Maybe you want to put something about that. Any of those types of things help you increase that RSI for students. Any questions about that?
Tara, the questions that are in chat have been about the length of a video note. How long can a video note be, and are there limitations, or can students create longer than 30-minute video notes?
So 30 minutes is the max for video notes. Never create a video note that's 30 minutes. Just gonna tell you, please don't. You don't want to create any video, if at all possible, that's 30 minutes or longer, because students don't engage oftentimes with something quite that long. Also, too, for screen sharing, that is the one thing that video note does not do. I'm not sure if they're going to ever add that capability to video note. So if it is something that students are doing in which they have to share their screen, they're not going to be able to do it using video note. They're going to need to use something like Stream. But again, you can make video notes up to 30 minutes. if you make a video note that's longer than 15 minutes, I would definitely encourage you to think about putting in the chapters so that students can pause and have a good pause place that then they can pick up. Because if they're trying to kind of find a place in the middle, maybe they find that place and then don't go back. This way, it would be a little more organized for the student, especially since you can give each chapter a title. And that way, you can have them focus. This 5 minutes is focused on this 5 minutes is on this 5 minutes is on this.
And do you know if there are differences between what an instructor has in terms of video note as compared to a student? Deanne is mentioning that students were being limited to about 1 minute on video notes. Have you heard of anything like that?
No. To be honest, no, and I am a student who uses video note because I'm also a student in an online class, and I don't have those parameters. It's 30 minutes, so maybe we need to chat and figure out what's going on. Because it should be the same unless it's been changed and I'm not aware of it. But literally, I did make a video note this weekend for one of my classes, and mine was definitely longer than a minute. And I believe I had up to 30 minutes. So we might need to chat and do a side chat. Other questions that I might be missing?
I think if you go back to your media library, you can see now why we say, please give your videos a title and a description so that you can find things again.
Yes.
That's been the biggest challenge, particularly obviously it's all of the things that you have created in your classes. So
Yes. And you can filter. So you can filter by content type, whether it's an audio or video. If you know you made it at a certain time frame, if you want to look at the source and go, okay, where am I looking at it from? But content type and date modified or date created are a great way to filter as well. If you're looking for something because you can't remember what you called it. Because even I, before I realized that they had beefed up the my media area so much, I didn't realize it either. So, I mean, I even have things that I'm like, that doesn't mean a lot to me. I have to go look at it. I mean, I know it's basically feedback, but for what and for whom and for when. So, yes, making making titles that make sense, adding descriptions that make sense, which is what this is, by the way, a video note to show new features. That's my description for this workshop. So as an FYI. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
I sometimes go into the Dropbox in the overall feedback area and I record audio feedback.
Yes.
I remember that it used to show in some weird place to the student. Can you go over where that actually shows up for the student when I do that?
Oops. Let me go to the Dropbox real quick. Okay, so I don't have any submissions, but what I can tell you is in the evaluation and feedback area here, if I had a student, that's where the feedback would be, that feedback box. You can either insert a video note in the feedback box directly or hit that add record or add video button. If you do the add video or audio button, it puts it underneath the feedback box. If you do the video note directly in the feedback box, then it's in the feedback box. I don't quite understand why D2L is not making that the same. It doesn't make sense to me, but that's the way it is. So if you do add video or add audio, it's going to be underneath that comments box. If you do add video note and then choose either video or audio in the descriptive box, it's going to put it in that overall feedback description area.
Okay, going at it from the evaluation side, not this side, but the other side. When you have a student and you're going into the feedback, so not the setup, but the other side, it says just record audio. So I'm not.
So
okay.
so you can select. So you have two blue buttons. You have one that says record audio and one that says add video or record video. If you
Yes.
do that, those are, if you use those blue buttons, those are the ones that add it underneath the feedback. If you go into the feedback description box and select to add video note, you can either add a video note as a video, or you can say, I just want to do audio only. And then it's going to put it directly in that box. That's what I'm saying. I
Okay.
don't understand why D2L hasn't gotten that worked out. I'm going to look on their boards to see, because surely it has to be something that needs to be worked out, because I've seen that as well. You're right. When I've given feedback, sometimes it ends up underneath the feedback box. And then I figured out nope, I don't want to use those blue buttons. I actually just want to use add video note because it'll put it directly in the feedback box.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions? All right, so the last thing is really straightforward and very fast, and that is about communication. It was our focus for communication. And it really is just letting you know when you are looking at your class list, which is here underneath communication. Again, I don't have students in this class, but when you click on class engagement, it's going to give you information for your students if you're using D2L in an online way for class engagement, meaning, are they logging into the class? Maybe there's a discussion in there. Are they participating in the discussion, etc. So you can see that information in a very quick way by clicking on that class list. It also is also a great way to, for example, if you just want to see, if you are teaching online class and you want to see, okay, how often are people logging in? Are there any uh, outliers out there who just aren't logging in enough, etc. Great way to see information for your students. Um, and the last thing I just wanted to talk about is that if you are in the class list, this is where you can set accommodations for students, particularly for quizzes, because otherwise you have to add time. Say a student needs 30 minutes extra for quizzes. If you add it in the class list area to that particular student, you only have to do it once instead of doing it over and over and over for each quiz. If you do it once, it'll automatically do that for the student, regardless of which quiz they get into. So that's a really important feature when you're looking at the class list. And then the last thing I just wanted to mention, and I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen real quick. The last thing I just wanted to mention was that if you use the view progress button for students, it will show you what their current grade is if you're using the grade book. Again, traditional online, we recommend always using the gradebook, regardless of what style of class or modality of class you're teaching. That is just a thing for you that is helpful, particularly, and it is also helpful for the students. So that's something you can see in that class list feature. And then the last thing I'm going to mention is just talking about announcements and reminding you that tool is there, that you can make an announcement to your entire class. Again, this is great for traditional classrooms, particularly say if it's a beautiful day and you decide, you know what, we're going to meet outside today, because I know sometimes faculty need a change of scenery just as much as students do. So maybe you make an announcement like that, something like that, or, unfortunately, maybe something happens and you can't get to campus that day. It's a great way to let all of your students know in one fell swoop, hey, class has been canceled, et cetera, et cetera. Instead of just sending an email, because we know that students often don't look at their emails. So that would be a way to be able to make a blanket announcement to the class without sending an email, or backing up the information, sending an email one way and then also posting the announcement. And don't forget too that in the announcements, because it is a description tool or description box, you can put those video notes and audios in there as well. So if you can do it written, you can do a video, you could do an audio, you can even put a fun GIF or meme in there if you so choose, to kind of communicate who you are to your students as well. And that's pretty much everything I have. Have I missed any other questions? I see something about turn it in. Any other questions that I've missed? Any other questions that anyone has? We have about 10 minutes left. I've gone through everything that I was going through for this focus for 24. So thank you for coming. We greatly appreciate it. And if any other updates do come out, between now and the next time I see any of you, we will definitely let you know that something is going on. But I think we're pretty good for a little while. But I hope that some of these features help you, regardless of what style of class you're teaching. Using D2L to connect with your students is a great way to not only help you and do things efficiently and get things in there, but for your students, it's really helpful as well. And we want our students to get used to using D2L because chances are they will probably take at least one online class. At least that's what our statistics are telling us about our students, is that they'll take at least one online class. So if you're in the Trish classroom, we hope that you'll use it for those things as well.